It lays the predicate and the foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer and ultimately to control the weather, and he who controls the weather will control the world.
Question: is cascading climate collapse getting a big boost from the climate engineers? How could it be otherwise? Geoengineering operations at this point cannot be separated from climate anything. On that note, let's take a snapshot of the wider horizon. First headline, quote, "Be ready to move quickly to higher ground. Forecasters deliver ominous warning of 1 in 1,000 year flood coming for central U.S." That's from livescience.com. From that report, the central U.S. could experience historic flash flooding this week as torrential rains and thunderstorms repeatedly strike the same areas, forecasters have announced. Remember that part. Repeatedly striking the same areas. I'll elaborate on this point shortly. Stay tuned. From the UK Daily Mail, yet more coverage of weather warfare, biblical flooding and deadly tornadoes forecasted in over 15 states. From that report, a massive storm is set to bring life-threatening tornadoes and potentially historic floods. Moving on, next from AccuWeather Climate Engineering Cover-Up Agency. Spring weather whiplash, Northeast faces wild temperature swings. More from AccuWeather. A rocky road is ahead in the temperature department with big daily temperature swings in many areas of the Northeast into early next week. Accompanying the swings will be chaotic weather conditions. Wow. What could be causing such unnatural and historically unprecedented off-the-charts temperature whiplash in so many regions? Spoiler alert. Patented processes of chemical ice nucleation, cloud seeding, endothermic reacting elements that are showing up in all precipitation samples. No, it's not random jet exhaust, as increasingly desperate disinformation trolls would like you to believe. Search the Engineering Winter section on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org for volumes of facts and photos on this subject. Same theme, winter weather warfare. Another from AccuWeather. New round of tree-snapping ice, heavy snow is heading for northern tier of U.S. From that report, a second significant snow and ice storm will visit hard-hit areas of the upper Midwest, northern New England, and southern Canada. This is manipulated flows of warm Gulf moisture that, as it reaches the higher regions in the U.S., is being chemically nucleated, and there is now almost always an ice storm transition zone between this warm flow of moisture and where frozen material eventually falls out of the sky. Again, what happens when chemical ice nucleation cloud seeding elements reach the surface before setting up? Ice storms. On that note from CNN, hundreds of thousands of eastern Canadians face power outages due to ice storm. From that report, Environment Canada issued winter storm warnings for freezing rain in Ottawa, parts of Quebec, and Ontario, with the risk of snow mixed with or transitioning to ice pellets, exactly what I just described. More than 350,000 customers were affected. How is this not winter weather warfare? You decide. Residents across Ontario, Canada, said on social media that roads were closed due to uprooted trees, and they had heard crashing trees since the storm began. Yes, this is an expected result of trying to create winter from warmth with chemical cloud seeding elements. There's more. From PetoskeyNews.com, a generational storm. Northern Michigan ice storm was worst in over 100 years, and they always give you some previous date, however far back it is, to make you think it's happened before, even if it hasn't. From the report, seasoned Northern Michiganders struggle to comprehend the magnitude of the storm's destruction. It's because it's not natural. It's increasingly being compounded by the climate engineers doubling down on their efforts. When chemically nucleated cloud moisture reaches the surface before completing the chemical ice nucleation process, an ice storm is the result. As the weather makers become ever more desperate to temporarily and toxically create surface cooldowns in a rapidly heating world, more and worse ice storms will occur, along with constant extreme hail, even the baseball and softball kind. Parts of Texas were somewhere in the 90s on Thursday of this week. 2 days later, snow was scheduled in other parts of Texas. In my wilderness region of Northern California, on Tuesday of this week, it was 39 degrees with various shapes of frozen material falling from the sky with audible and constant jet traffic just above the cloud cover, even though we are nowhere near any commercial flight paths in the airspace above my off-grid home. The very next day, Wednesday of this week, I was working in the woods, no shirt, catching sun, not cold, temperatures 30 degrees higher. What's wrong with this picture? And how ridiculously wrong do conditions have to become before populations wake up, look up, and reach for their pitchforks and torches? Question: could climate engineering operations be a core factor contributing to the colliding cold and warm air masses that create the ideal spawning ground for cyclonic rotations, aka tornadoes? Let's dig deeper. Are the scattered, migrating, manipulated flows of moisture from the Pacific being subjected to cloud moisture supercooling chemical ice nucleation operations? All available data would indicate the answer is yes. As this artificially cooled air mass continues in an easterly direction and eventually collides with manipulated flows of atmospheric moisture from the record warm Gulf, are ideal conditions for cyclonic rotations created, aka tornadoes? The answer is yes again. So about that point I mentioned to remember a few minutes ago, if the climate engineers were to maintain the manipulation of these aforementioned factors, would the same highly destructive weather keep repeating in the same way, in the same locations for multiple days? Yes again. Welcome to Engineered Earth. This is Dane Wigington. You're listening to the weekly installment of the commercial-free, non-political global alert news report, The End of the World as We Know It broadcast, brought to you by Geoengineeringwatch.org, the largest and most visited website in the world on the subject of global climate engineering operations, aka weather warfare. Reaching a critical mass of awareness is the only way forward in this fight. We're gaining ground, but not fast enough. We can and we must reach a critical mass, starting a conversation on climate engineering that leads people to a credible source of data. That's key. Geoengineeringwatch.org will continue all of our efforts to be the go-to source on covert climate engineering operations. A conversation on climate engineering can easily be started with Geoengineering Watch awareness-raising materials available on our homepage. Our extremely high-quality, 100-pound paper, full-color, printed awareness flyers and booklets we pass on for less than our overall cost of producing and shipping. We are sometimes preparing these packages to ship into the wee hours of the morning because we don't have a single day to spare. We're trying to supply various state representatives, media sources, agricultural groups, the list goes on and on. Please help us to sound the alarm. This battle will take all of us. Next from Fortune.com. Making it rain. How weather manipulation and geoengineering are fueling global tensions. No surprise there. From the report, weather modification is on the rise, but so are fears of, quote, cloud theft, misinformation, and accusations of cross-border interference. Let's repeat that last statement for the record. Cloud theft, misinformation, and accusations of cross-border interference. For the record, it doesn't take a large intellect to conclude that if the weather disruption operations cause precipitation to fall in one location before it otherwise would have, then that same precipitation obviously didn't get to the regions where it was naturally migrating to if nature was allowed to take its own course. This isn't rocket science. It's common sense, which sadly is now not common at all, it seems. Any form of weather interference is a form of weather warfare. The covert, preferred kind for the controllers, the kind that can bring populations to their knees without said populations ever even knowing they were under assault. Devastating drought and deluge scenarios, all at the whim of the weather terrorists. Did I mention that climate engineering fallout is toxic? Yes. About 1 million times over so many broadcasts, and that's in addition to the plethora of industrialized, militarized pollution, everything. Moving on from ScienceDaily.com, a just-released science study report. Here's the title. Rocky Mountain snow is contaminated, study shows. From the report, a new study shows that as storms carry snow to the Rocky Mountains, they are also bringing mercury and other contaminants from mines in the region. Yes, let's blame it all on the local mines, which are bad, of course, but don't look up, lest you see the geoengineering jets filling our skies with toxic filth. And by the way, when highly toxic mercury is combined with highly toxic aluminum, bioavailable aluminum, which doesn't exist in nature naturally, by the way, always has to be mined and refined and dispersed for bioavailable aluminum to be in the environment. It's always bonded to other elements naturally. And again, aluminum being a primary element named in climate engineering patents, showing up in the rain and snow tests across the board, the total toxicity can escalate as much as 10,000%. Yes, up to 100 times worse due to the synergistic toxicity between aluminum and mercury. So I wonder any of us can walk and talk at this point. So about all the toxic climate engineering fallout in our breathable air column. We all get to inhale it with every breath we take. So no, it isn't just pollen that matrix media sources would in general have you believe is causing your breathing difficulties, but they're starting to hint at the truth as it becomes all but impossible to hide. On that note, from Vox.com, this headline, quote, "Yes, your allergies are getting worse. It's the worst allergy season ever. Again, just like last year." That's the end of the headline. From the report, it's not just pollen you have to worry about. For many people, allergies are an added complication on top of other health and environmental conditions. Air pollution from ozone particulates, sulfur, nitrogen compounds can cause their own breathing problems, but when they intersect with allergies, they can make symptoms even worse. Yes, not just could, may, might make your symptoms worse. It will make them worse. And the combination of toxic elements creates what's known again as synergistic toxicity, which is exponentially more harmful than individual element toxicity. If you're in California, perhaps you can just take a drive to the beach and dive in to escape your air breathing difficulties from all the filth in our skies. Or are there even worse elements lurking below the waves? From AccuWeather, an ongoing and worsening situation, not just in Southern California, but along coastlines around the world. Here's the headline. Toxic algae off Southern California kills hundreds of sea lions, dolphins, and birds. Again, ongoing story, covered part of it on a previous broadcast. For the record, the algae blooms, again, a symptom of superheating, superpolluted, deoxygenating, dying seas. It's called Canfield Ocean. Brought that up many times in this broadcast. This is a certain death sentence for all life on Earth as we know it if this process is allowed to continue. The oceans die, we die. And in the case of Southern California's toxic seas, as I've mentioned before in this broadcast, there's also those 500,000 barrels of the highly toxic DDT chemical that our government dumped in secret just offshore. 500,000 barrels of now leaking DDT. And 18 other dump sites have since been located further out. Just one example of countless others around the world. And please don't believe me on the DDT dumping. Investigate it for yourself. The data isn't hard to find for those that summon the courage to face the truth head on. And remember and consider, again, as I've said many times also in this broadcast, hallmark of a healthy mind, an unyielding willingness to face the truth, no matter how dire. From SciTech Daily, the ocean's green glow is a warning sign. Yes, this is more harbingers of superheating and super polluted, dying oceans. The coming summer will bring countless headlines of dying sea life. Wait and see. Terrestrial life isn't doing any better. Question, what happens when the planet is ubiquitously contaminated with bioavailable aluminum nanoparticles? That's a core element, again named in climate engineering patents. This is what happens. Disease and die-off, even of soil microbial life. Again, for the record, bioavailable aluminum, toxic to all life forms, no exceptions. So when microbial life is systematically annihilated, both surface and subterranean, what chain reaction is triggered? Unchecked fungal proliferation across the board. Much like when antibiotics are consumed, beneficial microorganisms are killed off, fungal proliferation often results. Also, for the record, our nanoparticle saturated atmosphere is providing limitless fungal proliferation platforms. With all that in mind, new from Bloomberg, more on the spiraling out of control fungal problem around the world. Once rare fungal diseases are killing millions in an unprepared world. That's the headline. Yes, how true it is. An unprepared world with criminally insane controllers at the wheel and far too many with their eyes wide shut within the ranks of populations. A combination that doesn't bode well for the extremely near-term fate of the human race. But hey, the Ponzi scheme house of cards stock market will save us all from the unfolding at blinding speed, cascading collapse of the planet's primary life support systems, right? Good luck with that. And know the shiny metals won't be worth anything when the top priorities are food, shelter, and drinkable water. From mongabay.com, ground level ozone pollution poses growing threat to planetary health. Yes, one of an endless list of threats. Atmospheric ozone, good, essential to life on Earth, but almost gone, thanks primarily to climate engineering operations. Ground level ozone, bad. Also result of human activities, with climate engineering altering atmospheric chemistry and layering at the top of the list. Well, let's step back a bit. Maybe we just need a lot more oil, and we can all live happily ever after. With that thought in mind, aside from the damage done by burning over 100 million barrels of oil a day and 26 million tons of coal a day, and no, that's not good for the planet, no matter what you've heard from unresearched sources that keep parroting the same thing back and forth to each other. This is altering atmospheric chemistry. It's definitely a problem, not to mention all the destruction of the planet that happens when this extractive economy digs up and drills and burns all this. All of it a part of the problem. But let's consider the following consequences in this case from the UK Daily Mail. Texas hit by dozens of earthquakes in less than 24 hours. From that report, historically, earthquakes had been a rare event in South Texas until this year. That's a statement from the report again. Welcome to the cascading consequences of fracking. Drill, baby, drill. And there is that small detail of immediately polluting the groundwater aquifers forever. But hey, who cares? As long as the motorhome is less expensive to fuel up. Just another chapter from the planetary asylum. And anyway, the geoengineering jets are also gobbling up fuel. Don't forget that. We don't want them to run out, do we? I jest, of course, but for the record, the climate engineering operations are getting worse, not better. Though many more are waking up to them, if that's the silver lining, if there is one. From extremetemps.com, file this under unprecedented as far back as observations go. Listen carefully to this one. Not only is the 40 to 50 degree temperature gradient between Boston and New York City something we haven't seen before, but it's snowing in Boston, that's when this report was written, while it's 80 degrees in New York City. Think about that. After which came the chemical ice nucleation cloud seeding crash of temperatures in New York, and we had this statement made. Same source. Parts of New York City dropped by over 20 degrees in 10 minutes, with one station near the New Jersey shore dropping 27 degrees in 10 minutes. It's not nature. The climate engineers and their chemical ice nucleation operations are completely out of control. They are desperate to mask planetary meltdown until the moment of impact. From CNN, vast areas of Australia's Queensland underwater after unprecedented flooding. This is happening all over the globe. You can't keep up. I'm giving a tiny fraction of the headlines from all over the world, from devastating drought, unprecedented firestorms, and devastating deluges. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. From this report, communities across the Australian state of Queensland are bracing for more rain after record-breaking floods already cut off roads and inundated vast areas of the region's outback. Rainfall of more than 600 millimeters, nearly double the yearly average, was seen in the same areas only in recent days. The flooding situation is expected to continue, not just for the next few days, but likely for the coming weeks. How bad is that going to get? And how many Americans have any clue about what's happening around the world when we're watching scripted political theater every single day? And the vast majority of Americans continue to pretend that somehow we're going to magically kickstart growth again in the loot, plunder, pillage, and pollute paradigm on a finite planet with finite resources. And it'll go on forever and ever. Total delusion. It's hitting the wall now, already. Next from the UK Guardian. Same story, different year. That's the headline. Australia records hottest 12 months and warmest March on record. For the record, the atmosphere holds 7% more moisture for every degree C of warming. Must rain more overall on a warming planet, not less. Based on unfiltered frontline data, it appears we're past 3.5 degrees C now. According to the science community, that's the barrier at which the human race is functionally extinct, because the planet's life support systems will implode. It doesn't happen overnight, but it's already happening now. So that doesn't put us in a very good position, does it? So in Australia, where all the rain's falling, the heat is there as well, and where it's not raining more, the climate engineering, evaporation thwarting desiccant particles are core to that equation. They are thwarting the entire equation as the planet desperately tries to cool itself by increasing the hydrological cycle. Climate engineering is completely derailing that. The planet cannot respond to the damage already done with the climate engineering straitjacket on it. We must remedy this. Climate engineering must be exposed and fully halted, and that will take all of us in the population. We're the ones we've been waiting for. Don't count on government anything. How well has that worked so far? Over how many decades and how many situations? And now we face an immediate existential threat, and people are still pretending that some elected official is going to change this. There are some good elected officials. I want to make that clear, and I'm working with some. I'm very honored to work with them, and they're very honorable individuals, but they are the exception, not the rule. Climate scientists say everyone is getting fatigued at these records. They're talking about the heat records that keep falling over and over again in Australia. They say it's now incredibly predictable. Records for hottest overnight temperatures across March were broken in all states and territories except Tasmania and Victoria. Another fact to keep in mind, nighttime low temperatures are rising twice as fast as daytime highs because the heat is not escaping. And climate engineering is a key part of that equation as well. So are the unimaginable quantities of carbon fuels that are being incinerated into the atmosphere. But climate engineering particles, though they can block some of the daytime thermal energy buildup, they trap the same heat at night and destroy every aspect of the planet's life support systems. Climate engineering is taking us from the frying pan and pushing us into the fire. Let's put it that way. From BBC, driest March for more than 60 years in England and Wales, part of that equation I just mentioned. From Newsbreak.com, Alaska's coastline is eroding at an alarming rate. For people that think this isn't happening, you're not looking at data and images. You're not, or you would know this is happening. It's not hard to confirm, nor is the implosion of the cryosphere, the planet's ice deposits. Please take the time to watch the film Chasing Ice, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. You don't have to believe me. You don't have to believe anybody. It's not a political film. It's simply film footage. And if people are afraid to look at this film footage, then they don't want to know the truth. And unfortunately, that's the rule and not the exception. Most people do not want to know the truth. They want someone to enforce what they are already choosing to believe in spite of the truth. That's not a recipe for near-term survival. From this report, Alaska, the vast wilderness known for its breathtaking landscapes and diverse ecosystems, is facing a grave challenge. The state's coastline, which stretches over 33,000 miles, is eroding faster than ever before. The alarming rate of erosion is not just a concern for Alaska, but for the entire nation, no, for the entire world, as it poses significant environmental, economic, and social threats. We're all on one boat. If any part of that boat sinks, the whole boat sinks. Keep that in mind. From the UK Guardian, the ice is not freezing as it should. Supply roads to Canada's Indigenous communities under threat from the climate crisis. The report says last year was the hottest year since record-keeping began, bringing deadly wildfires, heat waves, floods, and rising sea levels. In Canada's north, rising temperatures are threatening a way of life as the winter road season grows shorter and shorter every year. Here's a polar ice update, aka the air conditioners of the planet, still free-falling further and further into record low territory. The climate engineers, in the desperate and destructive attempt to mask what has been unfolding at the poles for many decades, have only further fueled the overall long-term planetary meltdown. Heat's not escaping back into the atmosphere. The current thermal energy buildup on planet Earth is equivalent to the heat energy contained in 13 Hiroshima bombs per second. Try to digest that one. And don't believe me. Please don't believe me. Look that up. You'll find very detailed study to confirm that. Earth's energy balance is accelerating the wrong way at blinding speed. There is no energy balance. It's been obliterated. It's an energy buildup now. From phys.org. Earth's storage of water in soil, lakes, and rivers is dwindling, and it's especially bad for farming. Of course it is. The report published in the Journal of Science finds that global warming has notably reduced the amount of water that's being stored around the world in soils, lakes, rivers, snow, and other places, with potentially irreversible impacts on agriculture and sea level rise. Much more to this story. Again, climate engineering cutting off the flow of precipitation, which should be more overall, not less, to key agricultural regions. It's so systematic, so consistent, it cannot be a simple consequence of climate engineering. There's no benevolence in these programs. I want to make that clear. Though the climate science community would have us believe playing God with the weather with toxic elements, filling our sky with toxic elements is somehow a saving, mitigating measure, it's a death sentence. And that's exactly the direction we're headed. And now that so many climate scientists are being laid off, and I'll get to that in a moment as well, I can only hope and pray that they band together, stand up as one, and tell the truth while it can still make a difference. And about the snow that's not generating the runoff, I've been over that before as well. Much of the, quote, snow, a chemically nucleated snow, is sublimating, which is exactly what we would expect from a chemically nucleated element, which means that it's converting from a solid to a gas, and much of it bypassing the liquid phase, so there's not nearly as much runoff. And we hear from many in mountain locations that have confirmed exactly what I just stated. From novamedia.com, geoengineering is coming, whether we like it or not. That's the headline. They state we've entered into a new climate reality. The pace of energy transition has picked up, and so have the impacts of climate change. And climate engineering, of course, which this report would never dare mention. The report continues, but has there ever actually been an energy transition, ? Or do we just use more and more and more of everything all the time, ? They then say this, that all this is to say we're approaching the point when geoengineering will start to seem very tempting. Let's stop there. Really, quote, very tempting. That's the best this source can come up with? Media statements like this are carefully crafted to enforce the official denial of the ongoing and accelerating covert, in plain sight, climate engineering operations that are raging in skies all over the world. And yet, no matter how shockingly obvious and rationally undeniable these operations are, the official narrative of denial of it's just jet exhaust, nothing to see here, move along, is being aggressively pushed and propagated not just by matrix media sources, but also by a few bad online actors that claim they're truth tellers, when in fact they're anything but. What's more interesting and troubling is that some of the it's just jet exhaust deception pushers have actually run a donation pandering con game over the past 2 years, claiming they were going to take legal action to expose climate engineering, which they now say isn't actually happening. Again, just jet exhaust, according to them. So after collecting many tens of thousands of dollars in donations from activists acting in good faith, no legal action was ever commenced. And the recipient of the donations again denies climate engineering is even occurring. For the record, this source initially used Geoengineering Watch images and logos to fake the appearance that Geoengineering Watch was a part of their effort, which could not have been further from the truth. Geoengineeringwatch.org has never pandered for donations, ever. We simply carry on conducting our work as best we can with whatever resources we have to work with. In regard to the con artist activist repackaged narrative of it's just jet exhaust, an unfortunate amount of individuals, even within the activist communities, seem all too willing to instantly abandon their sense of logic, of reason, of eyesight, and observation the moment someone tells them the deeply alarming climate engineering operations in our skies aren't really there, aren't really taking place. Reason, logic, and objective investigation, if not abandoned, can only lead to the conclusion that climate engineering is a shockingly inarguable reality and has been for decades. Man's desire to control the weather has existed for thousands of years. Climate engineering patents go back well over a century. Military and civilian weather modification efforts and operations go back just as far. Not opinion, that's historical record. The U.S. military's hurricane modification operations began in 1947 with Project Cirrus. Again, this is historical record. How do they modify hurricanes? By dumping elements into them from aircraft, which they now have the power to do on a scale 1,000 times greater. In 1962, former U.S. President Lyndon Baines Johnson fanatically expressed the power structure's objective of controlling the world's cloud layer, stating, quote, "He who controls the weather controls the world, because he who controls the weather controls the food supplies, thus controls populations, thus controls the world until it completely collapses, at which time no one gets out alive." Later that same decade, the 1960s, the U.S. military was so successful at covertly controlling the weather in Vietnam with Project Popeye that the international community passed the INMOD treaties, environmental modification treaties, in 1977. Treaties that banned weather warfare in conflict zones, but no such provision was implemented for governments experimenting on their own populations. Imagine that. What was the method of precipitation manipulation, weather warfare, that the U.S. military carried out with Project Popeye? Dispersing particles into the atmosphere from aircraft. Former U.S. Air Force two-star General Richard Roehlig stated on film and on the record in the groundbreaking Geoengineering Climate Engineering documentary The Dimming that the military would never let go of a technology like weather warfare. Of course they wouldn't. Former U.S. Air Force General Charles Jones, also a former U.S. Air Force weather observer, fully acknowledged the climate engineering operations in the Geoengineering Watch documentary The Dimming, again, as do other U.S. Air Force personnel, also former federal and state scientists, a former presidential cabinet member, the former Canadian Minister of Defense. The list goes on and on. Geoengineeringwatch.org also took a National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration flying lab, top scientists in it, to altitude, sampled what heavy aircraft were emitting, processed those samples at a world-renowned laboratory, Rensselaer Polytechnic in New York, found exactly what we knew we would find, starting with climate engineering elements. We also took a very expensive private jet aircraft to an even higher altitude and found exactly the same. We're not guessing. I realize many of our long-term followers are familiar with what I'm stating right now, but our new listeners, our new followers, many new people coming to this issue are not familiar. Please bear with me, because this data needs to be stated for them. Climate engineering operations are simply a form of covert weather warfare. And the so-called climate science community applies names like solar radiation management, cloud albedo enhancement, stratospheric aerosol injection, as if there's anything benevolent at all to what's taking place in our skies. Simply climate disruption with toxic elements. But what do all those terms actually mean? Jet aircraft spraying tens of millions of tons annually of inconceivably small nanoparticles for the specific purpose of blocking out direct sunlight. They tell us it's for our own good, to cool the planet, they say. But is there a shred of truth in what we're being told from the geoengineers or the "it's just jet exhaust" alt-media disinformation trolls? No. How many are actually looking up? How many have taken notice that our once deep blue skies are all but gone? How many have taken notice that the filth that is blocking them out is coming from jet aircraft with visible retrofit dispersion nozzles mounted on the wing pylons and aimed into the exhaust jet stream to create the appearance of, no surprise, jet exhaust, when in fact it's anything but? Photos and film footage of all that I just described can easily be found at geoengineeringwatch.org. That is the purpose of our data repository site. About the so-called solar radiation management, we're told that doing so, blocking the sun with light-scattering particles, will slow the rapid heating of the planet and allow the carbon fuel carnival to continue for just a bit longer. Are they right? No. Only short-term toxic surface cooldowns can be accomplished at the cost of an even worse overall heating. When the weather terrorists really get desperate to cool things down, again, patented processes of chemical ice nucleation climate engineering operations are carried out. with temperature whiplash consequences, sometimes 50 degrees or more of swing in a single day, and Gulf Coast blizzards, which happened in January while it's above freezing and raining in the Arctic at the same window of time in January. Are so-called solar radiation management operations also used as cover for covert weather warfare against unsuspecting populations? You decide. Why would we think otherwise? For the sake of time, let's fast forward a few decades to now. Our now constantly filled skies. No more deep blue. Exactly what the climate engineers tell us would happen if they were to deploy covert climate engineering operations. Yet, the "it's just jet exhaust" repackaged official denial continues to be aggressively pushed, even by a few online self-proclaimed truth tellers. Never mind all the historical weather warfare data. Never mind the mountains of photo and film footage, proof of spraying, retrofit nozzles mounted on wing pylons. Never mind the at-altitude film footage of jet spraying, nozzles visible, turning dispersions on and off. And no, that's not from atmospheric layering. The atmosphere doesn't layer vertically. Never mind the loop patterns of aerosol dispersions, X patterns, grid patterns, all of it often non-commercial routes, often with the tanker jet transponders turned off. If you're observant, you can at times see jets at comparable altitudes, one leaving a trail from horizon to horizon, the other leaving nothing. They have the same engines. What's going on? Not hard to figure this out. Never mind the fact that all military jet tankers and all commercial carrier jets are equipped with what's known as a high bypass turbofan jet engine, which is in essence a jet-powered fan. 90% of the air that moves through this engine is not combusted, which by design renders it nearly incapable of producing any condensation trail except under rare and extreme circumstances. And the upper atmosphere is getting warmer, by the way, not colder, which makes it even less conducive to formation of any, quote, condensation trail. For the record, 100% of auto exhaust is combusted, yet do we see hours-long lingering clouds forming over highway traffic in the Arctic? Jet exhaust and any condensation it may under extreme conditions produce doesn't behave in this way. But the "it's just jet exhaust" deception attempt continues, not just from Matrix Media, but from a few online sources that seem to be carrying out some sort of agenda to try to discredit this critical cause as it's gaining ground rapidly. Many more every day are waking up and looking up. Hundreds of precipitation and air column lab tests have been carried out by geoengineeringwatch.org and many other sources all over the globe. Tests which contain copious amounts of highly toxic climate engineering elements like aluminum, barium, strontium, manganese, surfactants, graphene, and polymer nanoparticles, which, for the record, science studies now confirm are showing up virtually everywhere from the North Pole to the South Pole to the top of Mount Everest. And let's not forget the extreme polymer nanoparticle quantities showing up in human brains, hearts, and every other organ, and of course, our water and food. Yes, plastics are biodegradable all over the world from countless sources, but when many of the nanoparticles from the most remote places on the planet appear to be manufactured when examined under state-of-the-art magnification equipment, the particles are far too uniform not to be manufactured. Just jet exhaust, they say. Are polymer nanoparticles actually burning their way through a jet engine exhaust system? Don't think so. Never mind that the U.S. military has long since stated on the record that they consider Earth's collapsing climate to be the greatest threat they face, which, for the record, climate engineering is making worse overall, again, not better. And still, many cling desperately to the belief that our military would never deploy climate engineering without first getting permission from the public, right? The criminal cabal masquerading as the U.S. government would never pressure, threaten, or otherwise force other nations to collude and cooperate with covert climate engineering operations, would they? Again, how many are desperately trying to convince themselves, even now, that the controllers would never use a weather weapon on their own populations? Think again. It's business as usual. Geoengineeringwatch.org has documents, presidential, congressional, some up to 800 pages long, specifically outlining the scope and scale of these operations going back decades with budgets in the hundreds of millions of dollars, specifically outlining the collusion and cooperation between nations, specifically calling for blanket legal immunity for anyone and everyone involved. Please research this data. There's no chance of coming to objective, credible conclusions without research. You cannot go from what you heard somewhere from someone or on some post and assimilate that because it's what you want to believe, that this isn't really happening in our skies when it is. And about the copious quantities of polymer fibers showing up in our rain, these elements, as I've cited many times, they're used militarily as biological carrier platforms. Translation: to carry pathogens from the clouds to the ground. What are these elements doing in our rain? Polymer fibers and a long list of other toxic climate engineering elements can now be found in various forms of frozen material that's commonly falling from our skies. Again, like baseball and softball size hail. Again, think chemical ice nucleation operations. Search the engineering winter section on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org. Please do real research. And that's exactly what geoengineeringwatch.org always has done and is doing. Working with the University of Minnesota and hundreds of rain tests taken over that state, we extrapolated the amount of material that would likely be dispersed on an annual basis around the globe. And that number is somewhere between 40 to 60 million tons of nanoparticle material, all raining down to the surface where we get to inhale it. 40 to 60 million tons annually. That isn't coming from jet exhaust. We face a fight for virtually all that we hold dear. The most meaningful leap we can initially make in the right direction is to expose and halt the toxic atmospheric aerosol spraying operations. The only way forward is to achieve a critical mass of awareness in the population with the realization that, again, we face a fight for life, literally. Those that are truly committed to the cause at hand should share only credible data from a credible source. That's how you gain ground in this battle, not by propagating anything from anyone that posts something on a subject they know little or nothing about, but only sensationalize in the quest for clicks, or choose to marginalize by putting out false data, false narratives for some other agenda. That does not help move this fight forward. Credible data from a credible source. That's key. You're listening to the weekly installment of Global Alert News, the Bad News Broadcast, installment number 504, April 5th, 2025. This is Dane Wigington, your host. Global Alert News is brought to you by Geoengineeringwatch.org, the largest and most visited website in the world on the subject of climate intervention operations known as geoengineering. Global Alert News is aired on numerous AM and FM stations around the country. If any radio station near you is willing to air the GAN broadcast in order to inform their listeners of what Matrix Media won't mention, have them contact us at admin@geoengineeringwatch.org. We'll grant them access to our weekly broadcast for free, of course. Recordings of the commercial-free, non-political Global Alert News Hour can be found on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org under the recent column and on the Dane Wigington YouTube channel. If you're on our email list, please put us on your email contact book so that our mailouts don't go to the spam files. Please help us to share the groundbreaking documentary, The Dimming, which fully exposes the climate engineering atrocities with solid proof. We're approaching 26 million views on YouTube. Best way to share: circulate the direct link to The Dimming by email directly from the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org. Sharing directly helps us to overcome social media censorship. When viewing our YouTube of The Dimming or Global Alert News or any other Geoengineering Watch video on YouTube, please subscribe, share, and comment. All of this helps us to circulate critically important data to a much wider audience. Again, about reaching those that still aren't looking up. Start a conversation with Geoengineering Watch awareness-raising materials. They can be found on our homepage. Our only goal: provide activists what they need to move this fight forward. Again, our extremely high-quality printed materials we pass on for less than our cost of producing and shipping. We have Geoengineering Watch hoodies and shirts, photos of both on our homepage. We have scannable business cards, bumper stickers, all effective tools to help strike up a conversation on the climate engineering issue on which our collective futures most completely depend. Greatest and most immediate threat we face short of nuclear cataclysm. It's mathematical and statistical fact. Reaching a critical mass of awareness, again, only way forward in this fight. If we can expose it, we can stop it from the inside out. If you're willing to share a picture of yourself with a Geoengineering Watch shirt or hoodie, in some crowded location, ideally, please send us your photo so that we can post it as part of our activist compilation. That's part of our materials page. The images do encourage others to make their voices heard in this incredibly important battle to sound the alarm. Message to all those that are steadfastly committed to exposing and halting the climate engineering insanity, hopefully with the correct compass heading, credible data from a credible source. You have my deepest gratitude, now and forever. It's our collective efforts that can still make a difference. Moving on. more geoengineering cover-up and fascism fallout. From newscientist.com, aka Power Structure, Climate Engineering Cover-Up and Carbon Fuel Industry Lobbyist Disinformation Source. Dramatic cuts in China's air pollution drove surge in global warming. Well, that's what it is. Pay no attention to the geoengineering jets. It's just China again. This report says the rate at which the planet's warming has sped up since 2010, and now researchers say that China's efforts to clean up air pollution are inadvertently responsible for the majority of this extra warming. Do you see how this serves the power structure? Oh, we need to pollute more. We need to burn more, drill more, and we'll be cooler and everything will be fine. How's that going so far? You got to read through the lines. You have to know enough about the playing field to understand what lies are being told, and this is certainly one of them. This is covertly pushing climate engineering as a cure. Aerosols released by burning carbon fuels cool the planet in two ways, this report states. The particles themselves reflect sunlight back into space, shielding Earth from solar radiation. They also influence the way clouds are formed, increasing the occurrence of wider, longer-lived clouds also reflect radiation. Removing these aerosols from the atmosphere therefore eliminates a cooling effect. This is covert selling of climate engineering. What's really going on here? Actually, those aerosols trap more heat than they deflect, and they're destroying the planet's evaporative cycle and its natural cloud-making process. That's what's happening. From Gizmodo.com, poll finds that 75% of scientists are thinking about leaving the U.S. 75%. Think about that. More than 1,600 respondents reflected the chilling effect across research fields caused by the slashing of federal funding for universities and science agencies. The chilling effect may cause a brain drain as researchers across fields seek greener pastures elsewhere. Good luck with that. Some of the budget cuts are being done in line with Project 2025, a conservative movement that seeks to aggressively cut back on environmental protections in the name of liberty and personal freedoms, which won't do us much good on a dead planet, will it? I have no love for these scientists. Absolutely none. But what's happening is that the cuts are eliminating, not by accident, access to data sources that allow us to track climate engineering and its effects. No accident. From EcoWatch.com, more than 1,900 scientists warn the U.S. science is being annihilated under the current administration. Let's just stop for a minute. Is it not clear yet that everything is unraveling? That this paradigm is coming apart at the seams? How is that not clear? When we hit the wall, and for those that are awake, and if someone asks you, how did you know? Respond by saying, how in the world did you not know? How did you not see the oncoming train? The harbingers, the warnings, the red flags are everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. How are we to survive on a dead planet when virtually everything on it is dying by the day? How do people possibly expect this paradigm to continue? And yet we're doubling down on destruction on every single front. Mind-numbing. Every day I ponder the degree of insanity that we live with here on this planet, and that at face value we have no chance, zero. I hope there's more to this equation. I believe there is. I have to believe that. But I will not turn away from reality, because I know people, I know PhDs that refuse to look at reality because the only thing they can come up with for their mental defense is it can't be that bad because it just can't be that bad. Guess what? It is that bad. It's worse than that bad. Moving on, more bad news breaking reports on that theme from MSN. NASA is tracking a massive anomaly in Earth's magnetic field, and it's getting worse. Earth's magnetic shielding is compromised in this zone, creating a kind of hole in the planet's magnetic armor. Oh, there's big holes, all right, which are not being acknowledged. UVC is reaching the surface, and no wonder with what we've done to the planet, detonating multiple nuclear weapons in the magnetosphere, subterranean detonations. We don't know what that does to the Earth's strata. Climate engineering is destroying the protective layers of the atmosphere from multiple directions. It's no wonder everything's falling apart. More from Euronews.com. Melting Arctic glaciers have revealed 2,500 kilometers of new coastline. That must be a sign of global cooling in a coming ice age, right? All the ice is melting, and now we can see 2,500 kilometers of new coastline. This global cooling and coming ice age narrative is absolutely mind-numbingly moronic at this point. Climate's in total meltdown, and climate engineering is further fueling that fire. Next, from Scientific American, big banks quietly prepare for catastrophic warming. Yeah, that's an understatement. Sounds bad. It's worse than catastrophic. Good luck preparing for the banks Nothing they do will matter on a planet with its life support systems imploding. Another from Politico.com, big banks predict catastrophic warming with profit potential. Disaster capitalists, they never give up, do they? Filling their pockets with loot, knee-deep in water on the deck of a sinking ship. That's what we have here. From the UK Guardian, climate crisis on track to destroy capitalism, warns top insurer. We can't have that, can we? Got to keep that capitalism going until the planet's a lifeless ball of rock spinning through the dark expanses of space. Now let's add this trainload of total insanity from yahoofinance.com. Ex-CIA insider Jim Rickards reveals a $150 trillion U.S. asset was hidden for 163 years. Now he says it could rewrite the rules of the American economy. It refers to mineral-rich federal lands that span the western U.S., vastly underutilized due to decades, Rickards says, of regulatory deadlock. These lands are estimated to hold trillions of dollars in buried resources, including copper, uranium, lithium, and rare earth metals. Yeah, let's loot, plunder, pillage, and pollute until virtually nothing is left. There's no sanity in this equation. Our species collectively has lost its mind. Rickards believes that the release of this trust could trigger a national economic reset. In other words, plundering federal lands, national parks, etc., away from bureaucratic globalism and back towards self-reliance and prosperity. He says, quote, President Trump is going to reset the clock on our republic and return us to something known as the American system. The loot, plunder, pillage, and pollute until nothing is left system. Watch Earth and the American Dream. Take a look at that documentary and then consider everything I just covered. Next headline from the UK Guardian. Average person will be 40% poorer if world warms by 4 degrees C. That headline's false. The Mad Max scenario will have occurred long before that point. From climatehomenews.com, the Amazon rainforest emerges as the new global oil frontier. Why not? Drill, baby, drill, because the Amazon forest is dead anyway, right? What a mentality of too many in our species. The Huffington Post. Honeybee deaths surge in U.S., quote, something real bad is going on, end quote, from the headline. You think? Yeah, a lot worse than that. From MSN, super typhoon just shattered wind speed records. Going to get a lot worse on that front. Wait till this summer. We're hurtling toward the crossroad at which the degree of cascading catastrophes are so widespread and so vast that no one will be able to help anyone else. That's the crossroad when the Mad Max carnival of chaos and carnage will hit overdrive. Of course, the process has been simmering for decades. Countless controller-orchestrated atrocities carried out in conflict zones around the world, which they know they can easily get away with so long as they can manage to keep the masses constantly entertained with bread and circus and carefully scripted political theater. And of course, the always helpful, simplistic public programming that we are good and they are bad. Power structure programmed patriotism is a core component in this equation. The cowardly and compassionless kind, the kind that embraces the twisted narrative in which certain segments of so-called society convince themselves that they have the God-given right to loot, plunder, and pillage the natural resources from other people's countries because they believe they're special, different, and deserving, above and beyond the most basic rights of others or even the planet and its foundational life support systems upon which all of our lives completely and totally depend. Taken as a whole, the tale of the human race is one of constant conquest, constant carnage, and inevitable collapse. But this time around, completely unlike any past epoch of this cycle, the entire ship is going down, and we are all passengers on it. Of course, no one, absolutely no one, wants to listen to such dire conclusions. Too many have long since been too well trained to cling desperately to hopium. Just think happy thoughts and ignore reality till the moment of impact. Just go with the herd psychosis all the way to the bottom of the abyss, which is exactly the mindset that has delivered us, all of us, to this very dark hour. So, what are we to do? How are we to cope with the predicament we now find ourselves in? Here's how. Start by looking on the inside. That's where true strength lies. And when you discover how to truly harness that strength, how to put it to use, you will make a profound difference on the outside. On the inward journey, it is imperative to always remember and consider faith and foundational philosophies that are rationally inarguable. Examples: remember what is in your control and what isn't. Focus your efforts and energies on what is. Remember and consider that the reality we collectively face is what it is. It is in our sole power to accept it well or poorly, but accept it we must, one way or the other. Acceptance in this case in no way implies inaction. Quite the opposite. It means focus on reality and what, again, is in our power to make better, which is so much more than most ever dare to dream if they would only apply themselves as best as they can, given their individual circumstances. Life is a seasonal occupation, a short season at best. To know at your core that in spite of the challenges you faced, you kept your compass heading toward the high road, toward the narrow road, facing the oncoming storm and the rapidly rising sea of insanity head on, without yielding. That's a form of inner strength and solace that can't be taken, ever, by anyone. That is the God-given power that each of us holds in our possession. If we stand together with such unshakable resolve to make a difference while we yet can, to do our absolute best in the time we have been given, who can say or know how profound a difference we may yet make even at this late hour? No fear, no trepidation. Make your voice heard in this epic battle for all that matters. In the timeless words of the Stoic Marcus Aurelius, what we do now will echo through eternity. Check the activist suggestions link on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org for specific instructions on how you can help to move this fight forward. No one can take your God-given will, ever. Until next week, this is Dane Wigington from geoengineeringwatch.org.